That's what I'm talking about, baby. Another good fish. Oh yeah, look at this freaking thing. Easy, bud. Oh, that's a freaking tank. Look at this thing, man. Another good bass. Definitely over 40 inches. All right, man, with spring right around the corner, here's a couple tips on how to use the tube and worm, one of the more effective lures you control on a boat or kayak for striped bass. Let's just get right into it. My first tip is to go low and slow, and what I mean by that is you want to sink this tube as close to the bottom as you can, and you want to troll it at a nice slow speed. I mean, unless you're marking a ton of bass on the surface, typically the bigger bass are going to be hanging out down low by the structure, and you want this tube to pass right by their nose going nice and slow. So get that tube down. Now, in order to sink these tubes down, you're going to need weight. I prefer buying the tubes with the weight already built in. I think this is an ounce weight. It just makes it easier because if you get one of these like light floppy tubes, you have to add your own weight to it. It's just more moving parts, and I like to keep things as simple as possible. I mean, typically I'm dropping the tube down anywhere between 20 and 50 feet, and I've had no issue with 1 ounce weight getting me down there. Just depending on the depth, you might want to let more line out. Typically in 30 to 40 feet, if you let out 10 to 15 seconds of braid, that'll get you pretty close to the bottom, and a slow troll will kind of like keep it low. And that's pretty much it, man. If you keep that tube nice and low and troll it at just a nice slow speed, odds are if it passes by a big bass, it's gonna go for it. And another plus is if you keep it lower, sometimes it will keep you away from the bluefish, but not always. All right, tip number 2 has to do with presentation and bait to use with the tube and worm. When you get your tube, it's typically just a straight line. So what you want to do is put these bends in it like I did. So when you troll it with these bends, it gets this really nice twisty motion that bass just go crazy for. And as far as bait goes, I mean, it's in the name, tube and worm. I always like to use fresh sandworms at the end of my tube and worm. The thing is that's an expensive bait. So guys will cut them in half, use little bits, or even use like gulp products, which have all worked. But in my opinion, you can't beat fresh sandworms. Like if you don't mind paying a little extra money, you can never go wrong with having a nice fat fresh sandworm on the end of this tube. Tip number 3, which is very important, is do not let your tube bounce off the bottom of the ocean. This can be a little tricky at first because the goal is to get it as low as possible. So it's going to take a little bit of practice to get it low enough to where the bass are going to hit it, but not too low where it's bouncing off the bottom. And you'll also see in this next clip what happens if your tube gets too low. You get a lot of bait stealers like scup that'll steal your bait. So as you can see, if your tube gets too low, you're probably going to get little scavengers that are going to eat your bait. And because of this, it's important to check your tube regularly. You want to make sure you have fresh bait on there, and also it's easy to pick up seaweed and crap like that. And another thing that the tube does that's annoying is sometimes it'll hook on itself like this, or it'll just be trolling like a circle. So it's important to, like, I don't know, every 10 minutes or so, if you're not getting any action, check your tube and make sure everything's functioning properly. Another important tip for using the tube and worm is to always be ready. You never truly know what's going on down there. And actually in this next clip, you're gonna see a bunch of stripers following my tube, but not taking a hit. This was going on for like 10 to 15 minutes as I was trolling, and I had no idea. And at any instant, one of those stripers could have hit my tube. And it's also important to be ready for a hit as you bring up your tube to check for bait. I had 2 stripers this year, both in the 40-inch class, hit my tube like 10 feet off my kayak when I was least expecting it, just like kind of casually bring my tube up to check for bait. And if I wasn't really like paying attention, I mean, honestly, I really wasn't paying that much attention, but if I was truly not ready for that, I could have lost both those big fish. So this is a very effective lure. If you're in a good fishing area, just be ready for the hit no matter what. Oh! Look out. Wow. Wow. I think the camera was rolling. I just had a fish hit that at the kayak. Holy crap, dude. I think my drag's a little loose. Holy shit. Dude, smoked it right next to the kayak. Oh, I wish I brought my boat, because holy crap. Woo! Oh yeah, freaking tank. Look at this thing, guys. Oh. Woo! Now that is a lapful right there. Look at the freaking size of this thing, man. Oh yeah, that's definitely an overslot fish. All right, and one final tip for using the tube and worm is keep these things out of the sun. When you're done using the tube and worm for a day, get it out of the sun. Don't leave it rigged up on your rod and outside, because this is what happens. They get bleached pretty easily. This used to be a bright pink tube, and now it's just like ghost white. So yeah, probably gonna be retiring this tube this year. You can also see all these bluefish bites in it. These things do get beat up over time. It happens with any lure, but try your best to keep it out of the sun and also rinse off the hook, because as you can see, it gets really rusty. So yeah, that's pretty much it, man. The tube and worm is a pretty easy lure to use, and it's very effective. Just a quick recap, you want to sink it down to the bottom as close as you can and troll at a nice slow speed. You want to use fresh sandworms. You want to make sure that you're not bouncing off the bottom or letting it sit on the bottom. You want to make sure you're checking your tube often so you still have bait and you don't have any gross seaweed on there. You want to be ready at all times for a hit, because you never know when a striper or bluefish is going to come along and crush this thing. And you want to make sure to keep these tubes out of the sun so they last you a long time. And that's pretty much it, man. Springtime is right around the corner here in Rhode Island. It's about to be go time very soon. Good luck out there, and I'm sure I'll bump into some of you guys out there on the water.